Imagine being an athlete. You eat clean, you exercise, and you've never been sick a day in your life. Then, within just a few days, you find yourself in the ICU intubated, completely unconscious. It wasn't a car crash, and it wasn't a disease you even knew you had. It was caused by an organ that works inside you every single second, but it has absolutely no way of telling you that it's failing. Back in 2019, Bud was a vibrant 14-year-old kid. He played soccer, loved basketball, and was always active. He had zero medical history. There was absolutely no warning that he was about to collapse. But in less than a week, everything changed. At first, there was no sharp pain, just a vague feeling of being under the weather. But inside his body, one of his vital organs was shutting down at a terrifying speed. Soon, the real symptoms broke through. His skin and the whites of his eyes turned a deep dark yellow. His energy vanished, replaced by an overwhelming lethargy. Because this organ is responsible for clearing toxins from your blood, those poisons began to build up. They traveled through his bloodstream and started affecting his brain. Bud entered a dangerous medical state called hepatic encephalopathy. In simple terms, the toxins this organ could no longer clear were now affecting his brain. In one of his final lucid moments, he looked at his mother and cried,
"Mom, what's happening to me?"
Suddenly, the family was trapped in a nightmare. His sister stood by his bed, weeping, repeating just one sentence.
"I just want my brother to live."
There was no time left. Bud's life was slipping away. The organ collapsing silently under his right ribs was the liver, the last organ most people would ever suspect. At that point, a pill or bed rest couldn't save him. Bud needed an emergency liver transplant to survive. He was rushed to the top of the waiting list. Bud's story isn't just a medical anomaly, it is a textbook example of how fast acute liver failure can strike and how a silent organ failure can poison the entire body in a matter of days. But this raises a massive question. Is the liver really that important? If it is, why doesn't it hurt when something goes wrong? And what could cause the liver of a healthy 14-year-old to completely fail? Now let's answer the big question, why don't we feel our liver failing? Normally, when an organ gets damaged, you expect pain. Pain is your body's built-in alarm system, but the liver plays by entirely different rules. To experience pain, an organ needs sensory nerve fibers, essentially alarm wires that send a distress signal to your brain. But the actual functional cells of the liver, the ones that clean your blood, store your energy, and manufacture proteins, do not have these pain receptors. Think about it. The liver filters harsh toxins, processes heavy medications, and battles viruses every day. If its internal tissue could feel pain, you would be in constant agony after every heavy meal or simple painkiller. So, to let it do its job, the inside of the liver is completely numb. It can be actively destroying itself, and you won't feel a thing. It's like a massive fire breaking out inside a factory. But all the smoke detectors on the assembly line are turned off. The factory burns from the inside, while everything looks fine from the outside. So, why do some people feel a dull ache in the upper right side of their stomach? The pain doesn't come from the liver cells, it comes from the container. The liver is wrapped in a tight, protective capsule that is absolutely packed with sensitive nerves. The only way you feel pain there is if the liver rapidly swells up from acute inflammation, stretching that outer capsule like a balloon ready to pop. Or the pain is coming from a neighbor, like an inflamed gallbladder packed with gallstones. Otherwise, if the damage stays hidden deep inside, the liver remains completely silent. Instead of pain, the failing liver sends much quieter, highly deceptive signals. Fatigue, nausea, brain fog, a mild loss of appetite. Most people look at these symptoms and say, "I'm just stressed," or "I didn't sleep well." By the time the liver finally screams for help, the signal doesn't come from the liver itself. It comes from your eyes turning yellow, your urine turning dark like tea, or your brain losing the ability to think. So what exactly does this silent organ do that makes its collapse so deadly? Your liver is essentially 3 massive facilities packed into a single organ. First, It's a non-stop chemical plant. Every single bite of food you eat, every pill you swallow, and every substance that enters your bloodstream eventually passes through the liver. It breaks down nutrients, neutralizes toxins, and builds crucial proteins, including the clotting factors that stop you from bleeding to death. If this plant shuts down, even a small internal bleed could become life-threatening. Second, it's your body's emergency power grid. After you eat, the liver pulls excess sugar from your blood and stores it. When you sleep, fast, or work out, it slowly releases that sugar back into your system. Right now, your brain has the energy to process these words because your liver is fueling it. Third, it's a massive water treatment facility. The liver filters roughly 1.5 liters of blood every single minute. It catches highly dangerous waste products like ammonia before they can reach your brain and disposes of bilirubin, the yellow byproduct of old red blood cells. Now imagine what happens if all three facilities go offline at the same time. The chemical plant locks its gates, the power grid shuts off, the filtration system stops working. The chaos doesn't start with a dramatic collapse. For the first few hours, you might feel completely fine because your blood still carries the residual work of the liver. But behind the scenes, the countdown has started. Within hours, your blood sugar can plummet to dangerously low levels. Then your blood loses its ability to clot. But the most terrifying problem is the filtration failure. Ammonia and other raw toxins flood your bloodstream, and they are heading straight for the most sensitive organ in your body, your brain. This is what doctors call hepatic encephalopathy. It starts with mild confusion. You can't focus, your speech changes, then comes severe drowsiness, a loss of judgment, and finally a complete coma. This is why acute liver failure is an absolute nightmare. It's not just one organ failing. It drags the whole body down with it. The blood, the brain, the kidneys, they all crash. It becomes multi-organ failure. A person who was walking, talking, and playing sports just days ago is suddenly fighting for their life in the ICU. This is exactly what happened to Bud. His brain wasn't the core issue. His brain was being actively poisoned because his liver stopped cleaning his blood. As his mother later said, "I never imagined my perfectly healthy son could be hovering between life and death in just 1 week." But here is where the liver does something completely mind-blowing. It has a feature that sets it apart from almost every other organ in the human body. Surgeons can remove up to 70% of a human liver, and instead of failing, the remaining liver can actually regrow to nearly its original size. Imagine, the liver doesn't quit. Instead, it rebuilds. It possesses a rare, highly documented ability called liver regeneration. This isn't just a nice medical theory, it's a biological fact. If there is just enough healthy tissue left, the surviving cells will literally duplicate. 1 becomes 2, 2 become 4. The organ actually expands to carry the workload. Take the case of a 17-year-old boy once entered the ICU with severe viral hepatitis and acute liver failure. His brain was strongly affected, his heart weakened, and his body was collapsing. But after 25 days in ICU, he recovered without a transplant. Why? Because enough living liver cells survived. Once the attack stopped, those cells began to multiply and rebuild. This superpower is exactly why living donor transplants are possible. Doctors can surgically remove a piece of a healthy person's liver, transplant it into a dying patient, and both halves will grow and adapt into fully functional organs. One organ divided between 2 bodies, giving both a chance at life. There are rare documented cases of people born missing part of the liver and the remaining tissue adapted for years, but that is not the case in this video. However, this remarkable ability has a biological limit. Regeneration only works if there are healthy cells left to act as a foundation. If the damage is too fast and almost all of the cells are wiped out, the liver crosses a point of no return. There is no chance left to rebuild. That's when acute liver failure becomes a terrifying race against the clock. Take Emily. She was a high school teacher living a completely normal life. One day she was handing out graduation diplomas, smiling with her students. Just over a week later, she was strapped into a medevac flight heading to Manhattan. Her liver was failing rapidly, dragging her kidneys and brain down with it. According to the Mayo Clinic, acute liver failure is a catastrophic medical emergency that requires immediate intervention. When the liver is too damaged to regenerate, a transplant may become the only life-saving option. But a transplant isn't a magic button. You need a perfect match right at the exact moment your body is failing, while thousands of others are waiting for that same call. Every hour that passes, the brain takes more toxic damage. The waiting is agonizing. Will they find a donor? Will the body hold on long enough? It's a brutal race between the toxins destroying the body and the arrival of a second chance. So how does a perfectly healthy person end up here? How does a vital organ just collapse? There is a massive misconception that liver failure only happens to heavy drinkers. That is a dangerous myth. Sometimes the collapse starts with something sitting in your medicine cabinet right now. One of the leading causes of acute liver failure is an overdose of a very common over-the-counter painkiller, acetaminophen, also known as paracetamol. When taken correctly, it's generally safe. But if you take a dose that's too high, or accidentally mix multiple cold and flu medicines that all contain it, it turns highly toxic. It relentlessly attacks liver cells. Even certain natural herbal supplements can trigger massive liver damage. Just because a label says 100% natural doesn't mean your liver can process it safely. Then there are viruses like hepatitis, which can silently trigger severe rapid inflammation. In even rarer cases, the threat comes from inside. Autoimmune diseases can cause your body's own defense system to suddenly view your liver as a foreign enemy and ruthlessly attack it. And fatty liver disease isn't just a condition for the overweight. Thin, seemingly healthy people can develop it due to genetics or hidden metabolic issues. Perhaps one of these triggers was exactly what happened to Emily and Bud. A hidden virus, a rare autoimmune response, or a completely normal medication that quietly turned toxic. Right now, as you listen to this, your liver is quietly filtering about 1.5 liters of blood every single minute. It's performing over 500 vital functions to keep you alive. It cleans, it builds, it stores, and it balances your body's chemistry with no pain or complaint. After all, you shouldn't live in fear, but you shouldn't ignore the small warning signs when they appear. If you notice a yellow tint in your eyes, inexplicably dark urine, constant nausea, severe unexplainable fatigue, or sudden brain fog, don't just brush it off as a bad week. And noticing the small signs early can make all the difference. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next case.